The air in the high school auditorium in Canton, Ohio, was thick with the cheap, floral perfume of proud parents and the nervous sweat of graduating seniors, the folding chairs creaking under the weight of expectation as my name, Chloe Evans, was called not for an award, but for a mundane administrative notice. A slip in the paperwork that required me to walk across the stage, under the harsh fluorescent lights, just to receive a corrected form. A moment meant to be invisible, but which my mother, Linda, seated in the third row with her hair perfectly coiffed, and a smile etched for the neighbors, turned into a theater of cruelty, her voice not a whisper but a clear, carrying dagger meant for my heart, as she said loudly to my aunt, "See, I told you, some people are just meant for the background. She'll never amount to anything. She'll never wear a cap and gown that means something, let alone a uniform of respect." The words slicing through the mumbled congratulations around her, and hitting me mid-step, causing me to falter, my cheeks burning with a humiliation so profound, I felt the world shrink to the scuffed stage floor beneath my cheap heels, the rest of the ceremony passing in a blur of suppressed sobs and shattered dignity. The car ride home a silent tomb, where her disappointment hung heavier than any spoken word. A confirmation of a lifetime of comparisons to my brighter, more athletic cousin Sarah, of birthdays forgotten, because work was more important. Of achievements like my science fair ribbon met, with a shrug and a, "When will you learn something practical?" Of a childhood where love felt conditional, on a greatness I could never seem to manifest. The final blow landing that evening in our modest kitchen, with its yellowing wallpaper, as she said while washing dishes, her back to me. "Maybe community college is your speed, honey, but don't expect us to bankroll a dead-end dream." Which was the moment the last thread of hope within me, frayed by years of emotional neglect, finally snapped. Not with a scream but with a chilling, absolute clarity that this town, this house, this woman who gave me life, but could not see it, would be the grave of my spirit, if I stayed. So that very night I packed a single suitcase with frayed jeans, a few t-shirts, and the $287 I'd saved from babysitting, leaving a note that said nothing of revenge, only, "I'm leaving. Don't look for me," and caught a Greyhound bus at dawn, its windows grimy with promise, heading west with no plan, just a desperate need for miles to cushion the echo of her prophecy. The bus deposited me 3 days later in Phoenix, Arizona, a city of blinding sun and sprawling concrete that felt as alien and unwelcoming as the moon. My money evaporating in a week for a roach-infested motel room that charged by the night, the hunger pangs becoming a constant companion, a sharper, more honest pain than the ache of rejection I'd carried from Ohio, and I took my first survival job at a 24-hour diner off the I-10. The uniform a stained polyester dress that reeked of old grace and hopelessness, my feet aching through double shifts where men leered and tips were scant, my hands raw from bleach cleaning bathrooms at 3 a.m., the silence of my studio apartment louder than any scream, where I'd curl on a thin mattress and let silent tears soak the pillow, mourning not just my mother, but the girl I thought I was supposed to be. The isolation so complete I'd talk to the cracked wall, just to hear a human voice. My reflection in the diner's coffee pot showing hollow eyes and a smile that never reached them, a ghost in a city of millions. I moved from job to job. A data entry clerk in a windowless Tucson office, where the click of keys was a metronome of stagnation. A nighttime stalker at a big box store in Albuquerque, where the fluorescent hum was my only lullaby. Each city, El Paso, Oklahoma City, Omaha, a blur of bus depots, paychecks that vanished to rent and noodles, and a deepening well of self-doubt that whispered my mother was right, that I was background static, destined for nothing, the dream of any uniform, let alone one of respect, a ludicrous fantasy drowned in the sheer exhaustion of survival. The turning point, quiet and unceremonious as my decision to leave, came in a public library in Denver, Colorado, seeking warmth on a bitter January day, my fingers numb around a cup of cheap coffee, my eyes drifting past self-help books I couldn't afford to a faded poster on a bulletin board. A woman in the crisp, blue uniform of the United States Coast Guard, standing tall on a cutter's deck, the sky behind her vast and promising. The caption reading, "You don't need to know where you're going. You just need to know how to get there." Serve. It wasn't an angelic chorus or a bolt of lightning, but a simple, solid thought that I could do that. The uniform was not just fabric, it was structure, purpose, a belonging that had to be earned, not given, and a respect that came from within the institution of America itself. The path from that library poster to the first step on the yellow footprints at Coast Guard Recruit Training Center, Cape May, New Jersey, was a gauntlet of silent, grueling transformation. A revenge plotted not against my mother, but against my own limitations. I used my last shred of savings for a gym membership in a Denver basement, running until my lungs screamed on a treadmill facing a brick wall, lifting weights my body initially rejected, the physical pain a welcome substitute for the emotional numbness. I studied for the ASTAB test at that same library, memorizing mechanical comprehension and arithmetic reasoning by the light of a dented desk lamp, surviving on library granola bars and a fierce, focused hunger that had nothing to do with food. The journey was internal, a slow rebuilding of a psyche shattered in Canton. There were no mentors, no cheering squads, only the quiet discipline of waking before dawn, the resilience forged in every muscle that burned and every concept I mastered, the patience to endure the long, anonymous months of preparation. When I finally swore my oath of enlistment in a stark federal building, my hand on a Bible I hadn't opened in years, repeating the words to defend the Constitution of the United States, I felt a tectonic shift within me, not of pride yet, but of potential. A silent watch me sent across the miles to a mother who likely never gave me a second thought. Boot camp was a controlled hurricane of noise, drill, and deliberate stress, designed to break down the individual to build up the team, and in its relentless rhythm, the shouted orders, the precision of making a rack, the shared agony of pushing beyond physical limits, I found a paradoxical freedom. The chaos was external, governed by clear rules, unlike the toxic, personal chaos of my childhood, and my past suffering became an unexpected asset, for I knew how to endure silence, how to swallow humiliation and convert it into fuel, how to operate in a state of profound loneliness without breaking. I graduated not at the top of my company, but solidly in the middle, my uniform for the first time a source of a deep, quiet warmth, the insignia on my sleeve a language of accomplishment I alone understood the full weight of. My first assignment was as a non-rate seaman on a buoy tender out of Portsmouth, Virginia, the work brutally physical, chaining, painting, hauling heavy gear in the biting cold of the Chesapeake Bay. My hands once again raw, but now with salt and honest labor. My body growing strong and capable. I learned to tie every knot, to stand watch in the pitch black of a rolling sea, to find my place in the intricate dance of a crew. I volunteered for every qualification, every extra duty, finding in the Coast Guard's core missions, search and rescue, maritime law enforcement, environmental protection, a nobility of purpose that filled the hollow spaces inside me. I saved every penny, not for things, but for education, using tuition assistance to take online courses in maritime law enforcement, my focus narrowing like a laser. I applied for, and through sheer dogged persistence, was accepted into the Maritime Law Enforcement Academy, a harder, sharper crucible that trained me in boarding procedures, use of force law, and the intricate dance of asserting authority on the open water. My first law enforcement boarding, under the watchful eye of a seasoned petty officer, my heart hammering against my ribs as I climbed the Jacob's ladder onto a suspect freighter, my voice, when I issued clear, firm commands, did not tremble. It was the voice of the United States. And in that moment, Chloe Evans from Canton ceased to be just a wounded girl and began her metamorphosis into a professional. Promotions came slowly, fairly, from seaman to petty officer third class, then second, then first, each stripe on my uniform earned through exams, evaluations, and demonstrated competence. A tangible ledger of my growth. I transferred to a demanding station in Miami, Florida, working drug interdiction in the Caribbean, the sun a relentless enemy and ally. My world one of fast boats, night vision goggles, and the adrenaline, pumped silence before a interdiction, where the safety of my team and the success of the mission hinged on split-second decisions I was now trained to make. I learned to lead, first a small boarding team, then a section. My authority rooted in knowledge and calm under pressure, not in shouting or ego. I saved more, invested wisely, bought a small, tidy condo not as a mansion to flaunt, but as a sanctuary of my own making, its silence peaceful, not lonely. The revenge was in the quiet accumulation, the respect of my peers, the trust of my commanders, the growing sum in my investment account, the body that could run 5 miles before most people had coffee, the mind that could navigate complex federal regulations and tactical scenarios. I thought of my mother less as a source of pain, and more as a distant artifact of a previous life, her prophecy now a fossil. I occasionally examined with clinical curiosity, its power over me extinct. The final, formal step in my silent campaign was my selection for Officer Candidate School, a fiercely competitive program that would transition me from the enlisted ranks to the officer corps, the ultimate test of leadership and intellect. For 14 grueling weeks in New London, Connecticut, I was tested academically, militarily, and ethically, pushed to the very edge of my capabilities. And each time I reached back into the well of resilience dug during those hungry nights in Phoenix and Albuquerque, I found not bitterness, but strength. I graduated as an ensign in the United States Coast Guard, receiving my commission and the gold bar of an officer. The ceremony held on a bright spring day, the American flag snapping in the wind, my dress blue uniform impeccable, a symbol not just of personal victory, but of a covenant with the nation I served. My first assignment as an officer was as the operations officer on a medium-endurance cutter homeported in Seattle, Washington, responsible for planning and executing complex missions, from fisheries patrols in the Bering Sea to alien migrant interdiction off Central America. The weight of the responsibility was immense. The lives of my crew in my hands during dangerous evolutions, but the girl who had been broken by a mother's public scorn had been rebuilt, molecule by molecule, into a woman who could bear that weight with calm assurance. My revenge was complete, and it looked nothing like confrontation. It looked like a classified mission brief, delivered with flawless clarity. It looked like the respectful salute, returned by junior personnel. It looked like the signature on an officer's evaluation, fostering another person's career. It was legal, dignified, and woven into the very fabric of my service to America. I did not seek my family out, I had built a new one, forged in shared purpose and mutual respect within the service. But America is a small town in its own way, and stories have a way of traveling through the invisible wires of community gossip and social media glimpses. The moment of reckoning, unforeseen and unorchestrated by me, arrived on a crisp autumn day in Seattle. My cutter had just returned from a 60-day Pacific patrol, and we were hosting a family day for the crew, the pier bustling with spouses, children, and the happy chaos of reunion. I was in my service dress blue uniform, my medals and ribbons a quiet testament to a decade of service. My officer's cover under my arm, as I spoke with a young seaman's proud parents, explaining the significance of their son's recent qualification. I felt a strange prickle on the back of my neck, the uncanny sense of being watched not with professional interest, but with a seismic, personal shock. I turned, and there, 20 yards away, partially obscured by a group of tourists but frozen in place, was my mother, Linda. She was older, softer around the edges, her hair a different shade, but her eyes, wide, unblinking, swimming with a torrent of incomprehension, were unmistakable. She was visiting Seattle with a church group from Ohio, she later stammered, and someone had mentioned the cutter was open to the public. She had come out of vague curiosity, never imagining. The world seemed to slow, the sounds of the pier fading to a muffled roar. She took a hesitant step forward, then another, her gaze locked not on my face, but on the uniform, the sharp creases, the gold buttons, the name tag that read, EVS, the officer insignia on my collar, the proud eagle and anchor of the Coast Guard emblazoned on everything. Her hand rose to her mouth, a tremulous, ungainly gesture. The confident, cutting woman from the Canton auditorium was gone, replaced by a frail, looking stranger whose foundation of reality was visibly crumbling. She didn't speak my name. She just stared, her eyes tracing the uniform from head to toe and back again, as if deciphering a code that spelled the utter collapse of her worldview. And then the tears came, not the dramatic tears of a scene, but a quiet, profound overflow of shame, regret, and a staggering, dawning pride that was itself a form of agony for her. They streamed down her cheeks unchecked, her shoulders beginning to shake silently. She saw it all in that instant. Not the struggle, the hunger, the sleepless nights, but the undeniable result. She saw the respect accorded to me by the people around me, the authority in my posture, the complete and total invalidation of every dismissive word she'd ever uttered. Her greatest failure, in her eyes, was standing before her as the nation's greatest success. I felt no surge of triumph, no hot rush of vindication. Instead, I felt a profound, calm closure, like the final click of a lock securing a door on the past. I gave her a small, slow nod, nothing more, a recognition of her presence, an acknowledgement of the moment, but no offering of absolution or invitation. It was my silence now that held the power, a silence filled with a lifetime of earned dignity. She turned then, unable to bear the sight any longer, and melted back into the crowd, a broken figure leaving the field of my victory. I took a deep breath, the salt air of the Puget Sound filling my lungs, and turned back to my crew and their families, to my purpose, to my America. The revenge was complete, and it had required not a single word of confrontation, for the uniform, the career, the woman I had become, spoke with a deafening, elegant volume that finally, blessedly, silenced the ghost of her prophecy forever, proving that the strongest foundations are often built quietly in the dark, with the bricks of resilience, the mortar of patience, and the blueprints of self-worth, creating an edifice of character so unshakable that when the storms of doubt and dismissal finally rage against it, they find not a victim to destroy, but a monument to the indomitable human spirit, standing tall and respected under the American sky.